barely a week ago. So you cannot, within 1 week, attribute everything to that crisis. MPP keeps saying that we want to break the 8. It's not that way. Some of us have understood what they meant by breaking the 8. They want the fuel price should be more than 8 Ghana cedis. At the time that NDC left office, what was the price of petrol at that time? 14 Ghana cedis per gallon. Today, the price of petrol and diesel is more than double the price it was in 2016.
All right, and so those are concerns, of course, by the minority in Parliament, and they intend to have the Finance Minister in Parliament to answer some questions as to what Ghana is doing to cushion the regular Ghanaian. Amma, what do you say to that?
Well, good morning to you, good morning to our viewers, and good morning to all Ghanaians who will also be watching us later in the day, because I hear people actually do go back to your Facebook pages and watch you later in the day. About the minorities complaint, I see this as usual. I mean, it's part of their job. I'll be surprised if they said anything positive about government. So for me, it's part of what they're supposed to do as minority. But then we should look at the facts of the matter. For me, that I think is the most important. So they are hauling they intend to haul the finance minister to Parliament to ask him questions on why the fuel prices are going up. I think I can give a few reasons to why they are going up before they even haul the finance minister. As a Ghanaian, it's obvious that we're already having fuel crisis or fuel increases, as he said, long before the Ukraine crisis hit. And we're having it because the world prices were going up. And we're having it because times and seasons definitely are not the same. I heard him do a comparison between when the NDC left power and now. But when the NDC left power, there was no COVID. When the NDC left power, things were very different. Circumstances were different. World politics were different. Situations were different. So I find it quite interesting when you go and compare. Then perhaps we should also be comparing when the NDC came into power and when President Kufuor also left power. So things are going to increase. Things are going to change. World situations will never stay the same. Perhaps we should get over this fixation of when somebody was in power and what is happening. They are the ones who complain when equalization goes on. Please, let's move on. World situations have changed. And we have to project into the future. There's going to be more fuel increases, from what I can see, until the Russians and the Ukrainians decide to do what is right by all of us. We should understand that there's going to be more fuel increases. What we should be thinking of, how are we going to survive as an economy? And I've heard a few people also saying that, well, as much as the fuel prices are going up, we are also a fuel producing country. So whatever we are also earning would also go up. And from what yesterday I read a few pieces that I think we have, is it 17% of whatever we produce as a country. The rest is by the contracts we signed. But the rest is for the other people. So with the 17%, even with the 17%, some profits are going to come over it. So I do agree if they said the finance minister should start looking into ways and means of cushioning us. But then looking into ways and means of cushioning us means that we have to take money from somewhere. So it's a decision we have to make. If we are going to take the increases or the windfall that is going to come from these sales, these high prices, and therefore use it to cushion all of us by taking away some of the taxes. These are all permutations I'm sure the finance ministry is quickly doing, and they would definitely come out with it. All of them are feeling the pinch. We are all feeling the pinch, and we are all Ghanaians. The politics aside, we are all Ghanaians.
So there's nothing wrong if minority
No,
says that
I've never said
minister
this.
should
I've
come.
never said.
You said it's expected. The complaints are expected.
I've never.
But the complaints are not only from minority; it's also from regular Ghanaians on the street as well.
In all my sayings this morning, I have never said the minority is wrong. What I have said is that it is expected for them to say what they are saying because they are in the minority. Of course, the minority also represents a section of Ghanaians. So if they are complaining, every single one of us is going through. I used fuel to get here, and I buy fuel. So it is in my interest that government finds ways and means to cushion all of us. And with the present circumstances and the present issues that are evolving every day, I am sure that the finance minister would definitely find we have to adjust things and make sure that we are cushioned. But then the point is the cushioning will come, but I do not see the cushioning taking away all the issues that we have with fuel.
It would reduce it at least.
Yes. Oh, as for the reduction is important. We have to cushion ourselves. But as we said, we should also cushion ourselves in such a way that we do not take away from other sectors of the economy. It's also important that as we are cushioning ourselves for the fuel matter, we do not take away from. Johnny was just talking about school feeding. I'm happy that the impression had been corrected. Yesterday it was all over the place that the whole school feeding program had been suspended. That is not the truth. It is the expansion. Every year I hear there's a 30% expansion of school feeding. And the caretaker minister is saying that this year there's not going to be the expansion because the arrears have to be paid. And in a way I agree with her. If you have to pay people, you have to pay them before you add more people to it. So as much as we all not be too happy about the fact that the expansions are not going to come on, these are also some of the permutations and the how do I put it? The things that the finance ministry would have to do. Are you going to take away from school feeding and use it to
They say scrap the taxes. There are a number of taxes on fuel.
As for that,
and you should scrap it. They're talking about energy sector recovery levy, sanitation and pollution, energy development, energy debt recovery, pardon me, and road fund, as well as special petroleum levy. Scrap these taxes, and we'll get about some 25%, reduction in fuel prices.
That is the question I was asking. So you scrap those taxes. Those taxes are meant for certain purposes. How then do we make sure that those purposes are done? It is up to the finance ministry to do the arrangements and no, maybe we reduce this by this percentage, we would increase this. It's up to them. Ghanaians have every right to call on the minister and the government to do something. As for the doing something, it will be done. Now, whether we'll be satisfied with what will be done, I don't think so. And no matter what you do, people are going to complain. But then the point is something should be done.
Should Ghanaians be worried? Because we're hearing from the executive director of COPEC, and he says that, with everything that's happening around the world, it's likely that fuel prices are going to hit 9 Ghana cedis even before the end of this month.
I think that it will even go beyond 9. For me, I think so, because with everything happening and in one day, yesterday, for instance, we woke up, the world oil price was, I think, $110 in the morning. By the time we were going to sleep, it was 113. This morning, I haven't checked. So with all this...
113.94, so almost
So it's moving to 114. I'm sure by the time we go and sleep again tonight, another change will come. So with everything going on, I think we should start getting our minds ready for the fact that the prices would increase. And then get our government to see how and what they can do to cushion us. As for the cushioning, it has to come. But then we have to pay for it too. So these are all the issues that we have to... As I am not a finance expert, so as I see it, I buy fuel. So for me, as a government, party spokesperson and a Ghanaian, I believe a sort of cushioning should come in.
Okay.
But then the cushioning should be such that other sectors of the economy does not suffer too much.
Okay. Lawyer, do you agree with that?
Well, in terms of the hardship, I think that certainly. So, well, before I even start, a very good morning to you and good morning to everybody else. And I think when you watch the queues and traffic, you ask yourself how people actually are coping and how they intend to cope with current increases in fuel prices, especially with the hikes. And considering that this actually would be translating into just about everything along that logistics chain leaves enormous cause for worry. Indeed, I think that we've actually been on your platform on many occasions, and I've always reiterated the whole point about how this government has actually dissipated very quickly whatever funds were actually bequeathed to them when they arrived on the scene. Indeed, this is a government that actually campaigned on wanting to come into office and do better, that they were certainly going to be better managers of our economy. But of course, what we see now is this extreme mismanagement, one that I think leaves enormous cause for every well-meaning citizen of Ghana to worry. And indeed, when the minority speaks, they're speaking for at least half of our populace, because there's at least 137 of them representing a microcosm of the 275 member parliament. So they do have half of the voices if we're just counting numerically. But it means also that this is a voice that of course must be heard, and that we must also lend a hearing to whatever it is that they have to say. Indeed, when you look at the conversation regarding petroleum products, Ghana is actually a net exporter of petroleum products.
Yeah.
We had even news items when the finance minister reported at some point in 2018 that they intended to set up a refinery, and they had even secured a site in Takoradi for that purpose. We are still waiting. We still have all of the taxes on petroleum prices, and the new ones such as the sanitation tax, the COVID levy, and what have you. Indeed, remember that ESLA in particular was set up by H.E. John Mahama to at least ensure that we had resources to pay for the legacy debts in that sector. Indeed, it was also legislated upon because, one, it was to create accountability, to ensure transparency, and to be certain that Ghanaians actually bought into the whole notion. At the peak of the campaign, we were told even that they were going to scrap it. But indeed, as events will have it, once they arrived in government, the finance minister actually deemed it fit at the time to increase it to 30%. It accrued at least over 2 billion Ghana cedis between 2016 and 2020. We've been told that 1 billion was actually spent on COVID, and that part of the remaining 1.2 was expended on pensions. What has happened to the rest of it? And I believe that we all read the energy sector report, which actually proclaims that almost 1 billion of those funds are actually missing, and that they've been unable to account for them. This far, nobody has come to tell us what has happened to that amount of money. You know, I have this feeling that, and I think everybody is beginning to realize that what government is refusing to do is to show leadership, to swallow some humble pie and admit that there are some very, very deep challenges with how the economy has been managed so far, and that in terms of their expectations, certainly some have not been met, and that for all the 13 billion in Euro bonds funds that were borrowed, they have been unable to utilize them effectively to generate income to satisfy all of our needs. I think that is where we are. When people say that the country is utterly broke, I think that is an understatement. Prior to COVID, the World Bank posits that Ghana was already 5% behind in keeping up with its interest payments. The cedi has depreciated against the dollar by at least 7.6%. In terms of the budget that we are currently working with, when do we actually making forecast for that budget? The forecast that fuel prices will rise up to about $61. It has gone past $100 and is still moving on, especially because of events in Russia and Ukraine. But be that as it may, and I listened to the guy from COPEC when he spoke, we would be expecting that at this time in particular, people would even be making some monies because maybe the crude that was imported is still there, and that they might still be able to recover something. But unfortunately, that is not the case. That also speaks to a certain gap in how our finances are being managed. Indeed, when you look at the price stabilization levy, for example, it is supposed to be there for times such as these, so that government will then use those resources to cushion whatever it is that we are paying for at the pump, then to at least reduce and ameliorate the suffering on the good people of Ghana. You see, unlike most jurisdictions, salaries here are very low, incomes are extremely low. Most people earn very little. So when you have fuel prices, now crude is over $100, think about how that actually plays out on the persons who will be most affected by it. It would even go to affect food prices. And right now, I ask myself, who is out there actually worrying about the poor taxpayer who has been overly burdened by taxes?
Is government not worried? I know that the NPA had mentioned that they had sent a petition, to the Ministry of Energy to look at a way to cushion Ghanaians. And I heard the Deputy Minister say that, well, we are considering that, except that moving forward, if we cushion you, eventually we'll have to pay back for it, and that will fall on Ghanaians.
But do you remember that in one of the town hall engagements, the Honorable Finance Minister actually mentioned that if we did not allow them to pass the e-levy, he would only go back and tax petroleum. I'm sure at the time he didn't realize that he was making a very profound statement, that even prior to him imposing those taxes, that crude prices were going to go way over the top, even beat his expectations. So you see, I don't see any empathy. I don't even see any sympathy. I don't also see a government that is actually shifting position to appear a touch more humble, that they would actually be acknowledging that some mistakes have been made, that in terms of the economy, we have borrowed way too much. Look, in terms of this energy sector levy, for example, we have actually collateralized half of that levy. So it means that whatever goes into that kitty, only half of it is available to be utilized. So if you look at, for example, the petroleum stabilization component of it, how do we intend to raise those resources, even to cushion the already challenged public? And apart from that, look at all the other key facets of this economy. This government alone received $6.55, right? $billion from the oil revenues alone. It means that they received at least 75% of our total oil revenues. How have those monies been expended? And on what? Imagine what that looks like to a country like ours. Since COVID, we have received at least $1 billion from the IMF, close to $500 million from the World Bank. We've received special drawing rights of another $1 billion. Before that, in 2021 alone, we borrowed $3 billion in euro bonds. Where have all these monies gone to? I think that we even belabor the point when we come here day in, day out, and every day there's more bad news. Somehow there's just no light at the end of the tunnel. And
Government says they're addressing the concerns of Ghanaians.
How? I'm a Ghanaian too, at least I live here. I buy fuel too. I listen to radio, I pick up on news. I look at the headlines every morning. Where and how is government trying to stem these very difficult challenges that Ghanaians are currently facing? In addition to all of the suffering, we also have to deal with, excuse my French, the loose talk by government and its aficionados, telling us that we don't even know or understand what is going on. And sometimes you have to really pity His Excellency the President, because I believe that he made all of these promises based on advice that he considerately received from his own experts. And at the time, remember that the now finance minister was touted as an individual who had lived the talk and knew exactly how to manage this economy. 5-6 years down the line, he is the same individual, now literally almost in tears, telling us that the economy has totally collapsed around him. But why is he still in office?
But he says that's why we need to even pass the e-levy, because we cannot have majority of Ghanaians living here not paying taxes. So we need that so we can develop.
The GRA has told us clearly that they have actually even gone past what they estimated to collect. I don't know what the figures are. That they have collected enormously for the first time in 5 years. They really met all their targets, even in the course of COVID. And I've indicated here before that Burkina Faso, with all its problems and with COVID, grew its economy by 5.7%. So what happened to Ghana? Do you know that the cedi is currently the worst performing currency this side of the world? Why is that? We were told that an exchange rate at the time of a little above 4 cedis was so bad that governments needed to change. That in terms of all the perception indexes, that thanks to hardship, we needed a new government. So yes, we voted in this new administration with all the highfalutin promises that were made. But at least, when we were leaving office, we had introduced the energy sector levy. We expected that all the legacy debts would at least be taken care of. We also expected that if for nothing, the oil revenues of $6.55 billion, 75% of which has come to this administration in the period of 5 years that they've been in office. The question is that, why are they refusing that motion to interrogate how the COVID funds were expended?
Because you didn't go through the right process or channel, which is what the majority had said in Parliament.
But how else do you come to Parliament to request for such probes? You always come by way of a motion, and the discretion actually lies solely with the Speaker at any given time to decide on which motions to admit and which ones he will not admit.
But a report has to be forwarded from the Auditor General to the Public Accounts Committee. If that's not done, then he cannot come forward and account.
We now have the Auditor General's report. It's a public document. It's within the public domain. We've heard about the Public Accounts Committee meetings. We've heard about the monies that have hitherto been, their inability to account for them, their inability even to receive and go after other agencies to collect monies that have been lent out. Look, remember that the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice has just actually issued this ruling on what happened with PPA, for example. Why is the Attorney General not doing anything to recover some of those monies? We've heard about the copious sums of money that have gone to the Youth Enterprise Authority. Who is accounting for those monies?
Okay. Let me bring Amadaku back in, because the concern about the minister, the finance minister, also answering these questions is because of the fact that, at least when it comes to the 3 factors that affect fuel price increments, Minority says 2 of them, and we're all aware, 2 of them fall in his domain. And one of them is the depreciation of the cedi and also on taxes. When it comes to Ghana's cedi, at first we're at second but last when it came to the worst performing currency in Africa's, number of countries. But now we have even overtaken Zambia to become the worst. And a lot of people are saying that that speaks to the bad management of the finance minister. And that, again, is having a ripple effect on our economy and everything that surrounds us.
I did see the list of the performing currencies that are, how currencies in Africa are performing. And when I saw the list, unless the list I saw was different, it was, I think, 50 countries or 45 countries. Well, they're 45 or 50. And we're number 15. So as much as I do agree that our currency has started falling, how do you explain to me that if you are number 15 of a 50 list, you are the worst?
In Africa?
You are not, yes, you are not the best, of course. I mean, some time ago, we were, I think, second or second. Yes, we are almost the
second to last.
No, some time ago, we were almost, I think we're almost at a time where the best performing currency. And of course, we have fallen. I agree on that. But you do not, how do you explain to me that on a list of 50, and you are number 15.
It says Africa's top performing currencies.
That's what I'm trying to say.
And we are the last when it comes to the top performing currencies.
The list I saw was 50, 50, and we were number 15. How do you tell me that if you are number 15, then you are the worst? Of course, you're not doing well. To drop from second or first to 15, it means you have issues to deal with. But that doesn't mean that you are the worst. No, we are not. Sometimes I find it quite interesting when we run away with these narratives. And Ghana's currency is the worst performing. We are not the worst performing.
Among the top performing
we are not,
currencies,
and that is what I am trying
to.
That's what I'm trying to say. That in a list of 50, and you are 15, you are not the worst. You definitely have issues. You definitely have issues with your currency falling, but definitely you are not the worst. That is the misconception I want to clear. Do we have issues with our currency? Yes, we do. And just like every other country in this world, we are going to have issues. We are going to have issues, as I said, with prevailing economic situations worldwide. The world is practically in a depression. But to continuously drum home and to continuously say that you are the West. We are not the West.
If you were among the best, and we look at that list, and we're saying that among the best, now you have become
50,
the worst among the best.
And that is what I want you to change. In a list of 50, and you are number 15, you are not the West.
But if you're number 15, hold on, Amada. If you are number 15 among the top performing currencies in Africa,
the list was given.
You were second at a point. Now you are the worst.
The top performing list that I saw, and that's why I'm saying that unless the list I saw is different from what everybody else is seeing, was 1 to 50. And we were number 15 on that list. So do we have issues? Yes. Are we the West? No. And that is what I want us to get. We are not the West. So
but to fall from the top to 15,
definitely, that is what I have agreed, that we do have issues. But I will not agree that we are the West. When you are number 15 on a list of 50, you are not the West. You are not even halfway through. So do we have issues? Yes, we do. Do we need to solve these issues? Yes, we do. Because at a point in time, we're number 1. So what happened for us to drop to number 15? Those are the questions we should be asking. But to continuously say it that you are the West in Africa, you are not. You need to move from where you are. Of course, we need to move up. And we need to get all the things ready to make sure that we do move up. But this narrative that we want to push down into our psyche and on everybody that we are the West in Africa, I mean, we are in Ghana month.
What are we doing?
What are we doing is what we can do during a crisis, during a pandemic, during a world war. Well, I can't call it a world war. During a war that is telling on everybody in this world because of the fuel prices issue. And before we got to this level, I gave what I think, and I believe the finance minister would eventually come and tell us that we need to take some of the windfall we are getting to support our people. That is very important because, as I said, I also do buy fuel and I do want the support. But as we are doing the support and as we want to be cushioned, we should also make sure that we do not take away from other sectors of the economy, I mean, and totally also derail those parts. These are the sort of balancing act that the finance minister has to do. I believe that it's high time he does what he has to do and let us know. And that is why if the minority is saying that they want to call him, it's a good call. They can call him. And when he comes, I'm sure he can give the excuse. But this continuous, this continuous thing of trying to tell everybody that Ghana is the West when we are not, that is why I have an issue. If you are in a list of 1 to 50, and you are number 15, you do have issues, but you are not the West.
It's the top performing, and I'll keep saying that, top performing. And so if you're among the best, and when it comes to the best, you're trailing, then that's a problem. In the past, you were doing better.
But Amma, let me just ask you, are we now just racing to the bottom? Is that really
we are not racing to the bottom. What I am trying to say is what I'm trying to say is that, and I've said it, and I'll repeat it, and I'll say it again. This is not a race to the bottom. We did have issues. At a time, we were first, which I agree. At another time, we are dropping, and we are dropping because we have issues. But to continuously put out there that you are the West when they are 1 to 50 and you are number 15. Seriously. So for me, I believe that, yes, I will not in any way sit here and say everything is perfect. Definitely things are not perfect. We are all feeling the pinch of it, and it needs to be sorted out. And we are going to sort it out. That is what governments are for.
How are you going to do that?
Governments are for continuous. Governments are supposed to continuously support, continuously solve issues as and when they pop up. And that is what government is doing. My issue, and I'll continue saying it, is when you continuously degrade your own country, your own city, your own finance thing by putting yourself last when you are not.
How are we degrading? We're just speaking the reality on the ground.
No, they are not. The reality on the ground. No, the facts are that we are on a list of 1 to 50. We are number 15.
It doesn't make our case any better.
It doesn't, but we need to put the facts out there as it is.
But 15
But to say that you are 0, you are the bottom, when obviously you are not. It is my duty
15th is not good enough.
15 is never good enough. 2 is not good enough. 1 is the best. Good. So if you are at 15 and you want to work your way up, let's say it that way. We are working our way up. We are trying to sort out our issues, and we will get there. But to continuously say that you are at the bottom, when you are not.
The president promised us better.
When you are not, to continuously say that you are at the bottom, between a list of 1 to 50, when you are number 15, my dear, you are not at the
president
bottom.
promised us better.
Definitely
we were told that if fuel prices are so high, if the cedi against dollar is that weak, then it speaks of bad management of the previous government. So you were coming in to do better.
All of us have agreed that in the last 2 years, things have not been easy for any single human being on this earth, including Ghanaians. In the last 2 years, at the time the president was saying what he said, we didn't have COVID. We didn't have all these world upheavals. And every day as you go forward as a nation, it's just like life. New challenges will come. New issues will come. You look at how you solve it and you move forward. But you do not downgrade yourself to a level of 0 when you are not even there.
But if you keep referring to COVID, you received a lot of money during the pandemic.
What you do during the situation is to resolve it as you go.
Lawyer, I'll come to you, please.
To resolve it as you go. And as I said, that is life. Challenges will come. You will not have life rosy. And as a government, you will not have it rosy. As a nation, we are not going to have it rosy. In any case, during the time that you want to so desperately compare to, when there was no pandemic, there was no COVID, the economy was going well. If things had been managed better, I'm sure with the present circumstances, we would have moved on. So things are, as I said, things are simply not static. Life is not static. Governance is not static. Issues will come.
Okay.
What do we know? How are we going to even supposed to know what is even going to happen with this Russian-Ukraine? The trajectory, how are they going? Are they going to stop? Are they going to continue? How long is it going to? These are all permutations that we all have to think about. And so things would happen. Oil prices, as I said when we started, for me, I think it's going to go quite high. To a point, and then it will come.
Okay.
It is our duty of our government to cushion us. But as he's cushioning us, or the government wants to cushion us, the government should also make sure that other sectors of the economy do not suffer.
All right, let me let lawyer just speak on this briefly so we move on to our next issue.
I mean, Bella, sometimes when I listen to Amma, I wonder if she lives in this country.
Where do I live?
I think that we now have a government that is literally trying to deceive us. There's just too much dishonesty, and I think the lies are way too many. I've just seen a headline which is telling us that basically
I do live in Ghana.
market women
so
are actually
what does she
asking,
mean by somebody's deceiving? Isn't me deceiving
market
her?
women are asking the vice president.
Lawyer, she says she doesn't like the fact that
I don't think
she shouldn't personalize it. Of course, obviously I do live in Ghana.
And I have no doubt in my mind
because I don't know if she also lived in Ghana during the reign of Mr. Mahama, or she was living on Queen's Face.
I have no doubt in my mind that when we sit on these platforms, sometimes we speak as if we don't even understand the reality of the situation. Look, I would stay on the same page that considering the level of resources, the amounts of monies, look, there's history to the fact that in terms of all of the quantums of debt that this country actually owes, that at least 71% of that borrowing was done by this particular administration. What have they borrowed those monies for? Largely consumption. You see, gradually we are moving from blaming COVID for all our woes and suddenly gravitating towards what has happened with fuel prices. And when you come back and speak about J.M. Mahama, I find that even more interesting. Listen to this conversation. When the same fuel, crude prices fell a few years before 2016 and totally destabilized the whole budget, who was offering you any sympathy? We had the then running mate, Dr. Baumia, screaming his self-horse, talking about how they, in fact, he said he was at the Bank of Ghana, and that all of the money was sitting here, and that they would know just what to do to recover all the monies, and that they knew exactly how to invest the monies so that we could all do well. In fact, President Akufo-Addo promised that in his day, nobody would lack drinking water, nobody would lack electricity, that everybody will be so, every region will be so industrialized that people will not even go out there looking for jobs. 5 years down the line, why would they not sing from a different hymn book? That admittedly, all the noises they made are simply just that highfalutin noises. The reality is that the president himself has failed in terms of the promises he gave Ghanaians. The finance minister, who was touted as one of the finest in Ghana, has failed. And I have no doubt in my mind that presently they are actually falling over themselves, blaming one another for how we could have arrived where we are. Look, God was very merciful to Ghana, that in terms of COVID, we did not suffer as much as other countries, at least not as much as the West did. Can you imagine what our government would have been telling us today? For all that they promised to do with the COVID resources, where are they? We know that at least 32 million was spent on COVID meetings. And I asked the last time, imagine giving 1 cedi, even per household, per child, all the promises they made. Today we are even told that school feeding is being paused. Can you imagine that President Mahama is there?
The expansion is what?
Can you imagine that President Mahama had come up at any time with such a proposition about even whether it was going to be paused, whether it is ending, or whether it will not be expanded, name it. Look, think about free SHS, for example. All we expend on it annually is 2 billion. It's actually a drop in the ocean, considering they've received 6.55 billion of revenue from oil. Look at all the oil wells that were auctioned under their watch. Look at the realignments and reorganizations that took place. Where did all those monies go? Why can't our finance minister even account to us where all those monies went to? What were they expended on? And look, Amma, I may have all sorts of perspectives that are different from yours. I think that you are not being realistic. I think you are carrying on this deception and trying to create a certain wrong impression for people because you think that we don't read or we don't understand. But as I said, we all go to the fuel pump. We go to the market. We are watching our leaders talk to us, not outsiders. And what are they telling us? They are totally in denial of what the reality of the situation
We've
is.
We've had the finance minister say
that you met,
the economy
that you have taken
is not doing too well. That's why we need e-levy. He's being honest.
But I said the reason why we have Ken as our finance minister is not because he didn't have many other individuals. It's because he was touted as being one of the best. He was supposed to do much better. He wasn't supposed to now come and crying, telling us all the things that he's telling us today. And I've asked this question. If all of the 655 billion hasn't changed our fortunes, how will the e-levy, which is only figuring out to give us about 7 billion, Ghana cedis, not even US dollars, how is that going to resolve our problem?
Well, Professor Tuguba says we need to pass the e-levy and pass it quick.
Before we get there. No, before we get there.
No, hold on. We have to move.
I think that when Amma is speaking, we all allow her to go on. And
I don't attack her personally, do I?
Amma,
it's not personal.
So the personal
you are speaking. No, I haven't called your name. No, you did. It's not. Did I call your name? I said you are not being realistic.
I do not live in Ghana.
Yes, you don't.
I do have a problem.
Because if I say you are not being realistic, you don't live here.
I do live in Ghana.
No, you don't.
I am a Ghanaian.
No, you don't.
I am a very realistic person.
No, you don't.
You can address the issues as you want. When you are addressing it, I didn't say anything. But when you actually pick me as a person, and then you make me a target by telling me that I do not live in Ghana.
Is it not based on the comments that you made on this platform?
Let me finish. I do not live in Ghana. I am not being realistic. I see that as an attack on me.
No.
There are a lot of things you said that I didn't agree.
I think we are speaking English.
When obviously we are speaking English, we are not speaking Chinese.
And you know that we are not.
Okay, ceasefire, ladies, please.
I don't have any fire. This is
what she said. She feels this was an attack on her lawyer.
I totally disagree.
Because in 20,
okay. We have to move on. We have to move on. Please,
you were living right
calm
here
down.
in Ghana.
Please
when
calm
we went
down.
through Doom, so why are you not living in Ghana? Nobody is attacking you as a person.
And when Doomso was
lawyer,
what did you say?
Lawyer,
bring me in as a person. Because you set me up for attack. I live in Ghana.
Lawyer, she said she's not happy.
Maybe her pronouncements are setting her up for attack, not what I said.
No, your pronouncements didn't.
Please calm down, ladies. Please calm down.
I do not.
Please calm down.
I do not.
Let's just quickly take a look at what Mr. K.T. Hammond, he's the MP for Adansi Asokwa, had to say about a speech that was given by Professor Tuguba, where he says that, well, we don't want a coup in this country yet. I fear, and I'm quoting what he said, I fear that if we do not act quickly, we may have one in our hands very soon. Take a look.
Why is it that in the course of MPP administration, every opportunity that they get, the NDCs, not all of them to be fair, but the irresponsible ones are calling for the intervention of for the military. What is it about the military? I mean, I have read what he said. May means what? What is the meaning of may? It may happen. It may happen. What is the may condition? And you read what he said by way of his conditions. If we don't go groveling on our knees, pleading with the MPP, pleading with the NDC, and for that matter, I think the segment of the country that belongs to the NDC fraternity, and tell them that we got everything wrong, that we are not doing anything right. That is the may. We don't do that. We don't call off. In fact, he said we should call all the sins there are about the e-levy, quote unquote. If we don't do that, then the military may take over. He owes it to his students And he owes it the Constitution that everybody, including him, has no reason to say the kind of things that he has said. Because as you rightly say, he is a professor and of no other thing but of law. He understands the Constitution. This is the Constitution that is made it very clear. Anybody who attempts to subvert it commits the offense that he knows. I mean, invite the military. They know what they have to do. They are a professional institution. Their responsibility is to guard against the territorial integrity of this country. Period. They know it. They are not interested in dabbling in politics. The group before them have dabbled in politics. We are all the witnesses to what happened. They are not interested. The officers are professionals. The rank and file, they are professional. They know their duty. It is not the likes of Atukuba to invite them to hold the country to ransom. If the people do not like the MPP administration because they feel that we messed up, they don't like the whatever, it is for the people of the country to pass their judgment.
Lawyer, I'll start off with you because, well, Mr. K.T. Hammond is addressing Professor Tuguba. He says that this is the lowest. You know, if a whole professor, I mean, you can address the challenges with regards to government and the running of the economy. And if you're saying that, yes, the economy is in shambles, that's fair enough. But saying that that also, in a way, opens the door for a coup, then for someone with such high repute, it is totally wrong for him to have made that statement.
I think that the Honorable K.T. Hammond is just expressing another perspective. And I believe, and I have no doubt, that Dr. or Professor Atuguba wanted to generate just this sort of debate, to prick everybody's conscience, especially the persons who actually live in a certain denial. We have cocooned ourselves so much that we don't even look outside that cocoon to ask ourselves, what are the reasons why people express deep dissatisfaction, deep dissent? What are the reasons why suddenly coups that were no longer fashionable are rearing their very ugly head? And Bella, I know Raymond in and out. We're classmates. I have listened to him. I have read the full statement. He spoke in context. If government has any challenges to do with that, I would love to see them mount, if for nothing, a robust debate, at least for our intellectual consumption. Dr. Atuguba's paper was so well researched. It covered just about everything. It even hinged on the fact that in the context in which he spoke, if we did not find some liquidity, he could see that there would be trouble.
And that trouble would be what, a coup?
What else do we do? A youth bulge is currently on our feet, where most young people are unemployed, largely underemployed, and just reaching out for everything that is available. For a government that promised job creation as one of the key facets of their arrival on this scene. A government that promised to give each district $1 million so they could build on their own economies.
They say they did that.
A government that promised to give us enormous benefits and promised to do what? Better. Even when President Mahama at the time said he had fixed them so because we had all these new independent power producers, what were we told? Today, at the mercy of all the challenges that we have, look at the challenges that greeted the introduction of the Atuabu gas. But even then, have you seen how much we are buying our gas for? Look, Bella, we must start as Ghanaians to look for courageous individuals. I love courage. I wish that today we will have an individual in government who will come out not to defend government, but to speak truth to power. And I love the elder statesman, Mr. Kwame Pini, one of the stalwarts of our democracy, a man who suffered himself for similar charges of treason at the time and even served time. He still speaks about the courageous lawyer who decided to take up his case. I believe that Raymond spoke the minds of many Ghanaians.
You don't think that he's watering the ground for a possible coup, especially because, well, we're talking about youth bulge, unemployment, and all of that. I have read the statements. Exactly. I actually have it right in front of me.
So I should tell you that he spoke in a certain context.
He did, absolutely.
He spoke with a certain historical perspective.
For the regular Ghanaian on the street, and that is what K.T. Hammond is saying, that you know, for an astute professor of law, how do you make such a statement? Because indirectly, you are giving that idea to people that maybe a coup is the best way to go, instead of actually reminding them that after every 4 years, they can go to the polling station and cast their vote. If they are not happy with governments, they can kick them out.
My dear Bella, what we lack in this country is courage and honesty amongst ourselves. If you want to be objective, as any individual wants to be, you should know that the last call that Professor Atuguba made was to call for a coup d'etat. What he's telling us is what we ought to start doing. Little bit more candor, little bit more honesty, a touch of sincerity. Stop the stealing, stop the borrowing, stop the waste. He asked a question that for the 3 billion that was borrowed in 2021 alone, how have we expended those resources? On what? Nothing to show. I read a very interesting article on one of the Al Jazeera networks that spoke about the fact that under the Eswal Mahama administration, Ghana saw enormous development in terms of its infrastructure. When had we ever even thought about independent power producers? When the Tumso reared its head under former President Kufuor, we went for Bui Dam. But the reasons why the Akosombo Dam didn't actually augment what we had was because of challenges to do with climate and rainfall patterns. So there was actually a need, scientifically, to move away from reliance on the Bui and Akosombo dams. It is why we introduced these independent power producers. You see, I have no doubt that nobody is a repository of what is right for Ghana or what solutions we are looking for. Everybody makes a case for Ghana. The question is that those who are in charge of administering Ghana currently, how much of it are they willing to listen to? I think if government has any defense to make in terms of what Professor Atuguba has said, let them mount a robust platform and debate the issues he has raised.
Professor says that let's pass the e-levy quickly, because at the moment
I am even
where we are,
that he fell and hinged his debates and points on that matter, and yet nobody is picking up on that. So what is government afraid of? Just losing power. That's what it has all become about, how to survive in power.
But what do you
really
think?
Why we elected
because the
them into
minority have said constantly that there's no way they're going to allow the passage of the e-levy.
I have asked you time and time again, Bella, what is 7 billion cedis as against 6.5 billion in oil revenues? That is all gone down the drain and nothing to show for it. But suddenly 7 billion can build the roads that you and I need, can give us the water that I'm buying from a tanker every day.
Professor Atuguba thinks that we should do that. Otherwise, then we're going to have to tax,
like everybody else. I have every reason also to have points that where I disagree and part ways with what other people have to say.
So you disagree with his statement on e-levy, okay?
And he says that the country is flat out bankrupt. Has our Minister for Finance admitted this publicly? Has he told us the mistakes he has made in how he has mismanaged our funds? Has the Vice President, who then mounted every platform available to berate and denigrate the predecessor government, told us why we are where we are?
The Finance Minister said, you know, the economy is in shambles.
But no, it's not in shambles. We have no economy even to speak of.
We don't have an economy.
It's completely moribund. It has collapsed totally around them. And I think that what we expect now, and I believe Raymond actually spoke at length about it, a touch of humility will serve all of us well. A little bit of sensitivity, because currently it is not President Mahama managing the affairs of this country. It is you, because you actually convince Ghanaians, literally, that you will do a better job.
Okay.
But in the end, all we see is these excuses upon excuses upon... I mean, we are tired of the excuses. Okay. No, I don't want to belabor the point. Why? How many people have not spoken about the challenges we foresee? What happened to job seekers when they went to a place to try and get jobs? There was a stampede. These things only happen in the stadium when we go to watch games. But for the first time, it happened at a job center. We have serious, deep cracks in this system. We have a government that hoodwinked everybody to arrive where we are, and literally has emptied all the coffers. Why? What happened to the Bank of Ghana and all the money that was in the boat? Remember that under COVID, we even took 10 million Ghana cedis from the Bank of Ghana. Have we replaced those monies?
Okay. Let me bring Amadako in, because Katie Hammond clearly is not happy with what Professor Atuguba says. But you know, listening to lawyer, she says that he spoke in context. And we're taking his speech out of context.
You know, the funny thing is that I find it quite interesting that the only people who can smell, see, project coups in Ghana now are members of the NDC and people who are sympathetic to them. And isn't that a bit funny and interesting? All of a sudden, in the last 5 years, things are so bad to the extent that Ghanaians and the military would seriously think about a coup. Is that what they are trying to tell us? I mean, the good old well, he's not old. The professor, I found it a bit. Katie Hammond's words, Honorable Katie Hammond's words, are quite strong, and I simply just agree with him.
You agree with him?
Oh, totally. 100%.
He said some unprintable words about.
Those are the words that
though.
I do. I will not use it as a person, but
okay.
I agree with what he's trying to say. You are a professor of law. I am a student of law. I'm not done. So I am in no way comparable to him in what he knows about the law and what he does know about coups in this country and what he knows about constitutionalized. He knows it. And you come with a paper, and from what I hear, a friend of his, his friend's paper,
dissertation, a PhD dissertation,
and
yes.
you are trying to tell all of us that whatever you are saying, if it is not done, there will be a coup. And you expect Lawyer Bauer and all of them expect government and all of us to take what he has said, hook, line, and sinker, and not ask him questions.
No, but he's
so
just
the questions
saying
that we are asking, and I agree with Katie Hammond, that you have a right to tell us that the economy is in shambles. Good. You have a right to state what you want to state. After all, you were the former executive secretary to the former president, Mahama. So yes, we all know where you're coming from, and we understand you when you are stating it. But to state and to impugn that if what you are saying is not done, there will be a coup. I mean, what's the logic?
He's not saying when you don't do what has to be done, there'll be a coup. But he's saying that if you look at the closeness of recent coups in the sub-region, then it should be a cause for worry.
And that's my interest and what I find funny, that all those who are predicting and all those who can smell and see and tell us that there's a coup is the NDC. And the NDC only sees a coup when the NPP is in government. Because if I do remember, I believe I was quite young at that time, during the reign of, or the presidency of ex-President Kufuor, we had Dr. Tony Edu also continuously in the media telling everybody there's going to be a coup. That didn't happen. During President Mills's time, I didn't hear any NPP member. If there is, let me know. Going round saying that there's going to be a coup. Were things okay during that era? During President Mahama's era, when we slept in darkness for 4 years, did anybody call for a coup?
Well, in 2013, Captain Budukumsin, and if we can just project it, he had also predicted that there was, that a coup was right at that point. Let's just take a look. He said it was imminent. This is Captain Budukumsin, and he's the head of security at the Flagstaff House.
What I'm trying
now, he said it was imminent. As at 2013, when former President Mahama was in power.
When you have learned professors, people who are deans of respected law faculties like the University of Ghana, coming to tell us that if what they are saying is not done, then there's a coup. And you have all their followers or people affiliated to them also projecting that line, and they all belong to a certain political party. Well, what's the certain? They all belong to the NDC. You think the rest of us should just keep quiet and look at them?
But we are seeing clearly on the screen. This is also a retired officer of the Ghana Armed Forces. So a man of high repute.
And
so he said the same thing as well.
But when he said it,
hold on, lawyer,
did you get the rest of us following the train? All making that noise. You didn't.
Please,
what I am trying to say, let me finish my story. When you were talking, there were lots of things I didn't agree, but I kept quiet.
On and on.
When you were talking, I kept quiet.
No, you did not.
When you say all of this, and we are telling you that that is not the case, what Katie Hammond is saying is that, wait, that is what we should be encouraging. That after every 4 years, all Ghanaians have the right to change the government. Democracy is not by force, and that is the good thing about democracy. When you are not happy with something, we are just about 2 years into this administration. In the next 2 years, there will be an election. If Ghanaians are not happy, they will change. I mean, we know Ghanaians.
So what makes it different from what we've just projected? Because he was also talking about how government officials just used state wealth to enrich themselves.
Let me finish my statement.
You know, he said this in 2013. That was when former President Mahama had just come to power. Because you made a statement and I had to just come in and put out this fact.
What I'm trying to say, when you have a professor who is training the minds of the next generation, and this is how he can put out his issues, because he feels that if what he's saying is not done, there will be a coup. We also have a right, and Katie Hammond has a right, Honorable Katie Hammond has a right to reply as he did. And I agree with what he said. Wait in 2 years or 2.5 years, there's going to be an election. If Ghanaians are not happy, definitely.
Did we give the same advice to
they'll vote them out. And
officer?
Whilst you are waiting,
Ama, did we give the same advice
I wasn't
to
there,
the captain?
So I wouldn't know. I don't know who gave him advice.
So is it not hypocritical then that we're calling out
this now? And we are all calling him out because what he is doing is just a follow-up of all the things that they have been doing in the past few months.
Should we not have called out the captain as well for the statement he made?
Him out. You didn't call him out at that time. It is now. I am calling him out.
Not me, you, your party. Did you call him out when he made that statement?
With Katie Hammond, Honorable Katie Hammond, on the point that the professor should have known better, and the professor should know better. It's as simple as that.
Shouldn't the military officer have known better? You're saying that this was an astute professor of law, but this is a military officer.
Of Ghana.
He should have known better, knowing the history of
they know what they are supposed to do. They know their work, and they are prepared to do it. You wait in 4 years. Professor Atubuga, is part of the NDC. He then sets out. He goes to campaign. He tells Ghanaians that I don't agree with the MPP. I think they have mismanaged the economy. And then you get them to come out to vote. Until then, you do not go about warmongering and mongering coup d'etats. It's as simple as that.
Katie Hammond said that by now we should have had the national security invite or pick up Professor Tuguba for the statement that he made, so he would explain it to them.
That is a suggestion.
But that's what he's saying. But should we not have done that then? To Captain Budukumsin when he made the statement, he is a retired military officer. He should have known better. Why was he not invited to also ask questions?
Or not as their job.
You're refusing to address anything concerning Captain retired Budukumsin.
Because it happened 13 years in 2013. We are talking about 2022.
It doesn't make any difference. It's still a conversation about
I haven't said it makes a difference. What I am saying is that when you have a professor of law who is in charge of a faculty that trains the next generation of lawyers, it's not in his place. Why
was the captain not invited by the national security to also answer questions on saying that a coup is imminent?
Mongering coup.
Ama, you are avoiding that question.
I shall not answer, obviously.
Why would you not answer?
I don't think it is.
He's been made the head of security at the Jubilee House, even after
you do not bring in a captain who is sitting here somewhere as an equalization to a professor of law.
He is the head of security, Ama, unless you're not aware.
Student. And Auntie Joyce is talking about having a conversation.
Ama,
and you are a dean of students. You are a dean of the faculty
at the moment.
And he's going around mongering coups. And you are asking me about an issue that happened in 2013.
No, but the same person who made that statement.
I'm not even too interested in answering that question.
The same person who made that statement is the head of security at the Flagstaff House. You don't want to respond to that.
Rights like every Ghanaian.
Has no right to go around because I see him as sitting in the sitting which he is.
Then we should not have appointed the captain as head of security.
And doing the work that he is doing, he did not speak well.
Then we should not have also appointed the captain to be head of security at the Flagstaff House. Do you agree?
Bella, I have told you that it is just another perspective. Put that statement out there and get 10 intellectuals. Let them come and vet it for you and pick up the context in which Professor Tuguba spoke. And I remember the Professor of Osuama issue many years ago. We've had many of these examples. I have no doubt in my mind that Professor Tuguba spoke truth to power. People may not like
He
it, so
didn't.
they'll be shouting horse.
And obviously,
and you remember,
as a professor
at
of
the
law,
time,
I
candidate
think
Akufo-Addo,
with the
you
sort
can
of
scream
reply,
your whole head
with the
off
sort
and
of
scream the
reply
whole house
and the
off.
reactions coming.
Let me tell
you
how
will
many
know
reactions?
that
All
as
from
a
you.
professor of law.
My time
Oh
is
no,
up.
your
We have
time
to
is up.
go.
So why
Bella,
did I let her land?
She's spoken forever.
No.
The only response
You spoke longer than I did.
me. Check the time, and people are even complaining. Because you keep repeating yourself too. The only thing we have right now is that we lack courage and a certain moral turpitude.
I find it interesting that all of a sudden, Honorable Kwadwo Nkrumah is now one of their top.
Well, no, I didn't say that. I spoke in context. See, that's the problem. You guys don't listen. Listen carefully to what I'm saying. Me, I don't speak out of 10. I speak very carefully and pick my words the same. Bella, I have one thing to put on record. I remember then candidate Akufo-Addo speaking about an Arab Spring. Do you recall? Who picked him up? Nobody did. You know, we can all moralize. We can all pontificate and say all the things that we want to say just because we are in a tight corner. I understand. Government is down and out. All the lies, all the fake promises. Nothing has played out. Look, Dr. Atuguba, if you put him in a classroom with all of them put together, he will make the same points and he will get people who will believe him. I'm telling you,
Of course, he will get people
same
who
points.
You don't think
he will
that
get
he should
people
be
who will
picked up or
believe him.
invited by the
For
National
what?
Security to answer questions?
I've told you, I said subject that paper to strict proof. You will come back tomorrow and tell me something totally different. And let me put it on record. Dr. Atuguba has been training students across the world. I'm sure that paper has been subjected to strict reviews by many intellectuals. It will be a case study in countries where they are objective and happy to learn. And I will say one thing. For those who have ears, let them hear that times are indeed very, very hard. Look, you remember the examples she keeps going back to about Dumso and all the minutes. Bella, we're all here. I remember how President Mahama lost sleep day in, day out. But ask yourself, was Dumso personal to President Mahama? It was that he was also looking for solutions. You understand? To end a problem that had been crippling the country and our economy. Who showed President Mahama mercy at the time? Did you ever hear anybody from the opposition come in the morning and say, oh, Mr. President, I'm here this morning to have a conversation with you. This and this is what we can do to help. Did you hear any professors from the MPP side come and deliver papers on what we should do? No. They told Ghanaians that the only solution you have is to vote us into power. So, yes, if my memory serves me right, we just did. And we've realized that it was just highfalutin noise, just empty promises. All the things they spoke about, they had not even tried and tested. They had no clue even what they were coming to do. And
if you said they had no clue, I mean, that's unfair.
Why not? But where is fairness when you are struggling? Where is the fairness when you are hungry? Where is the fairness when you cannot even find basic coins to buy fuel for your vehicle? When you cannot even find anything else, and yet the president can go to the Dubai Expo, and I can bet you he'll be traveling private. I hope he will bring some profits from that Dubai Expo, because I think at this time, the president should be behind his desk, working to find solutions to our challenges and not hobnobbing.
Okay.
He just returned from a four-country tour. What is he going to Dubai Expo for? I think we need to know. Look, Bella, we can scream ourselves hoarse. We can shout all we want, whether it's personal or otherwise. The reality is that everything that they spoke of has exposed them. The fundamentals are so weak that you need at least over 7 cedis to chase $1. The cedi is now what? Depreciated at almost what? 7.6%. And tell me something. But for the cedi depreciation, maybe the fuel pump will not be as high as it is. We all know why it is where it is. It is because the cedi has lost value. Where are all the efficiencies they promised to give us? I heard one of them speaking about a homegrown solution. Maybe Mr. Tekwe should have left a blueprint that said Tekwe should have followed, and maybe followed closely. And who knows where it would be. He brought that spirit of investment banking to state affairs, borrowing without any recourse to anybody, probably not even listening to anybody about what strategy was in the borrowing. What have we used over $350 billion for in 5 years?
Ama, so we've heard from the president, not directly addressing citizens, but on statements that he's made at the AU, at ECOWAS. I mean, he's going to the Dubai Expo and all of that. Of course, he'll be making speeches. But we haven't heard him address us directly as Ghanaians. Ghanaians have been crying that the economy has become too hard for us. I mean, our pockets are not reflecting, you know, what the president had promised in the past. things are difficult. The vice president has not said anything about e-levy. He keeps going on about digitalization. I mean, we've heard so much about that, but not about e-levy and the economy. Why are they not speaking to Ghanaians about these issues?
So when you have a professor who, as I said, is going around and he had his program and he said all the things he said, and these things have serious implications on security and on our nation, and you are trying to address that, and then we start going round and round and round and round into the same old issues. Auntie Joyce said that what he said has been put to strict, it should be put to strict proof, and then we should have other intellectuals debating him. But that program, there was one professor there who also said that he didn't agree with most of the things that he said. So it was a program, or it was an intellectual thing that they were having. Now the rest of us who are the consumers of that program, we also do have a right to bring in our perspectives. And for us, and as I said, I agree with Honorable Katie Hammond.
But we moved on from that. I'm asking about the president. We haven't. And when he's going to address us, I'm asking about the vice president as well.
You allowed her to talk on that issue.
I asked her a question and she responded. I had asked you to also respond on that already.
No, you didn't.
I didn't ask you a question. I asked you about Katie Hammond already. When is the president speaking, Amma?
Let me just.
I want you to answer my question. Ghanaians are waiting for the question.
When he will speak.
When is that?
The president will speak when it's time for him to speak.
When will that time be? So that one we can.
I have no idea, but he will speak when he will speak.
What about the vice president?
Let's move on.
What about the vice president?
The Constitution does not ask the vice president to come talk to the nation. The Constitution says it is the president who has to give us the State of the Nation address.
But he spoke a lot about the economy before.
The president will do
it. He had a number of lectures about the economy.
Are you going to let me talk?
No, I'm asking you a question. Hold on. He spoke about the economy many times. We've heard him speak in recent times. Yesterday he spoke on digitization and did not touch on the economy.
The vice president has been on this digitalization agenda, and he's been doing very well on it. That is what he intends to project, and that is what he's doing. It's his job to do that, and he's doing it. You cannot force him to come and tell you what you think he should.
He's the head of the economic management
team. When
it's
time for him to speak. Back to Professor Atubuga.
My time is up. We cannot go back to that. My time is up, Amma.
There's no going to be a coup in Ghana. Ghana is going to.
That's where all are.
Ghana is going to go to the polls, and Ghanaians are going to decide what they want.
Okay.
Simple.
All right. Thank you so much. Ellen Amadako is a member of the MPP communications team, and lawyer Joyce Ba Mukhtar is a special aide to former President John Dramani Mahama, and she's also a former Deputy Minister of Transport, and of course a lawyer. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. And we have more coming up right here on the show. Of course, it is Ghana month, and so expect that our programming will be heavy on everything Ghanaian. We'll be back with a lot more. Keep watching. This is TV3 New Day.